I would like to see Tuvalu by myself. I would like to see Vanuatu and all those famous places and check where it took off to in the wrong direction and try to explain it for them. Yep.
I think this would help a lot of people because the biggest scare, I would say, of this, I learned recently that climate change is always happening. It's a natural thing and it's cyclical. But most of us are now relating to climate change as if it's a problem when it's a natural cycle. So I think it would help a lot of people release their fears and their worries and their concerns. There's a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety now.
Yes.
And a lot of upset, and the climate has now been made to be the monster, and it's not.
Yep.
But it's related to that.
So right you are, but this personal basis, when I had my book and so many people bought it after a newspaper article in London, so many interesting stories was told in letters to me. How so very afraid they were, and that part I didn't know. So it's interesting to learn that. It's terrible, but I should take the opportunity and tell people: don't worry. Look at the coast. There are coasts which are in danger because of a long-term erosions. That people are putting houses where they shouldn't have put houses. But that's another thing. It has nothing to do with this global parameter which people have claimed that this war. And that worry we can lift off the shoulders of people. That was one other thing in my book. I free the world from the condemnation of becoming flooded.
I think that's really important, which is why I wanted to speak with you in this broadcast dialogue, because this is a great fear. I mean, as I'm listening to you, I have the imagery in my head of the Al Gore film. I literally see the models taking water higher and higher and higher all over the cities. That imagery is in my subconscious, and even as we speak about sea level rising, that whole thing is already imprinted in my consciousness.
Yeah.
And so when you have imagery that's imprinted in consciousness, right, the subconscious believes it if it looks official most of the time. That's the devilishness of what we have to face. It's kind of like with advertising. A lot of people don't even know they accept the advertising they see subconsciously.
Precisely. You pointed exactly one of the things I'm saying. Earlier, we could nearly accept the lies in advertising. We understood that and that shampoo, and so if they say that they're absolutely the world's best and it did that and that phenomenous effects on your hair, we know that it was exaggerations. But when this is being allowed, even in science, that is so sad, you know. And this is the part which really makes me both angry, sad, and so, because this is the misuse and this even the destruction of science in some way. And there's so many academies of science which have given out statements, and they shouldn't have done that, because it's so loosely founded, but it's all like a snowball. It has started to roll, and all people jump into the bandwagon. But in this case, the bandwagon has collapsed, and now we should rethink and go out and look at the field. The bandwagon is there, and you have fallen off, and we are standing in God's scenery, and we have to look around and see the reality. And reality must come and make a new world. So the new world we have to put on observation, and computers should be there in order to guide us, but they should not lead us.
That's a great distinction.
Very great distinction.
Don't you think also that part of a willingness to look and rethink this whole matter is going to require a leap of faith, just to be willing to be receptive to rethinking the entire matter?
Either we should simply dismiss the IPCC of United Nations, or we should make new officers.
The complexity about that, the complexity.
The head, but all true. I mean, we should take specialists for each branch of the issue. And I mean, why should they all give the same result? I mean, of course, if it is true, this should be conflicting. One say, oh, here is terrible, and the other say, no, here is nothing to worry about. And see, disasters have always been on. And with this enormous increase in population and with the increase of megacities, like we have Haiti, we have the earthquake in Haiti. That is a terrible thing. So many people died. It is still going on. All these problems and disaster which is there. But it's one city, one mega city. Any day it may become another similar large disaster somewhere else in the world, because we have concentrated the vulnerability and the potential of disaster in the mega cities. And it goes for diseases, it goes for earthquakes, it goes for flooding, it goes for so many things. And that is how fragile, dangerous we have built our world. And we should address those, so to say, real threats. Those are real threats which we must cope with, or at least try to cope with. The other is what is going. I'm afraid it was a distraction. They took away the word's eyes from those more urgent things. But I'm not sure about it.
Talk about the solar minimum, if you could, for a few minutes. Explain it to the public. It's really been left away from the entire dialogue.
Okay, yes. And I tell you why. Because when IPCC started in 88, 89, it was purposely meant, it was launched partly from Sweden, and Bolin became our meteorologist became the first president. It was purposely said that the sun should not be considered, because this is a primarily meteorologic oceanographic project. You see? And so therefore, but of course the sun was there. So in geology, and this is what I'm working with, and that I had a project on geomagnetism and climate, so we specifically addressed these questions. The sun has maxima and minima. Today we are at the end of a longer. I mean, we have the 11 years. 11-year cycles, but those two have a longer term cyclicity. Okay, so for example, in 1687 to 1703, we had nearly no sunspots, and it was a very, very low activity. And at the same time, we had a little ice age. 1440 to 1460 is the same, a solar minimum. 1809 to 1821, we had another solar minimum, a little bit shorter but quite deep. And this was when we had a war in Europe, and there was, of course, people were suffering tremendously much for that. And there is some sort of cycles on cycles, and if you play that game, you know that in about 2040, 2050, at around there, exactly, the time is not so easy, but it's quite clear that you will have another solar minimum. So if you look at the other solar minima, you say, what happened then? It was very, very cold in the northern hemisphere. The Arctic was nearly blocked. And what is this? Because nowadays they are talking about the Arctic will be ice-free. You hear these completely different stories. And the polar water, the Arctic water, went down into the North Sea, and from the North Sea down to central Portugal. So but at the same time, in Gibraltar and Morocco, it was exceptionally warm, because the southern branch of the Gulf Stream had increased, whilst the northern branch had decreased. So that is also a function